1 month after my daughter's wedding, the photographer called me, her voice a whisper over the phone. "Mr. Hayes, I've found something terrible in the photos. Please come to my studio immediately. Come alone and don't say a word to your daughter." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. The phone rang just as I'd set my coffee down on the desk. It was a Tuesday morning. The house was quiet, and the quarterly financial report was spread out before me. It was the kind of quiet moment you feel you've earned after 40 years of building Hayes Hardware. 3 branches across Austin. Good business, good life. I almost didn't answer the unknown number. "Mr. Hayes." A woman's voice trembled. "This is Catherine Price. I was the photographer for Megan's wedding last month. I need to see you right away. Alone. Please don't tell your daughter." I felt my hand tighten around the phone. What's wrong I can't explain over the phone. But I found something in the photographs. Something very serious. The air in my study suddenly felt thin. "What kind of something tomorrow at 9 at my studio on South Congress? Please, Mr. Hayes, come alone." Before I could answer, Lauren's voice erupted from the kitchen. "Dad, I've told you 3 times I need that new car. My Honda is an embarrassment. You promised you'd give me the money today." Kyle's laughter rumbled from the living room, followed by the blare of some sports show on TV. "I'll be there," I managed to say into the phone, barely hearing my own voice. Catherine let out a relieved breath. "Thank you. I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes. I'm truly sorry." She hung up. I stood frozen by the desk, the phone still pressed to my ear, staring at the framed photo on the wall. Megan, radiant in her wedding dress. Stephen at her side in his tuxedo, smiling impeccably. 1 month ago, I'd spent $85,000 on that day. Every penny had seemed worth it to see my older daughter happy. Something very serious in the photographs. "Dad," Lauren appeared in the doorway, her cell phone in one hand, car keys in the other. "Did you hear me? I need money for a new car. The Honda is 7 years old, it's humiliating." I looked at my younger daughter, 31 years old, living in my house for what was supposed to be a temporary 4 years after her divorce. Kyle had moved in 6 months later. Rent-free, no departure date. "We'll talk about it later, sweetie," I said. Later doesn't work for me. I have to go to the dealership this week. Melissa just got a new Lexus and I can't keep showing up in that junker. I turned my gaze back to the computer screen, but the numbers had blurred into smudges. "Dad, are you even listening to me?" Later, Lauren. She huffed and disappeared. I heard her footsteps stomping up the stairs. A door slammed. I picked up my coffee. It was already cold. Through my study window, the Westlake Hills morning stretched out bright and cloudless. The July heat was already starting to build. Everything looked normal. Everything felt wrong. The day crawled by. I tried to focus on inventory reports, on quarterly projections, on payroll schedules, but my mind kept returning to Catherine's trembling voice. The wedding had been perfect, hadn't it? Megan had been glowing. Stephen had been attentive. The ceremony at the Botanical Gardens, the reception at that luxury downtown hotel, everything elegant, tasteful, expensive. What could possibly be wrong with the photos? Around noon, Kyle wandered into my study without knocking. He never knocked. He moved through the house as if he owned it. "Hey, Walt," he said. "Lauren says you're being weird about the car." Without looking up from the computer, I answered. "I told her we'd talk about it later." "Yeah, but she's pretty set on it. Better to just give her the money, keep the peace." He leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. 38 years old, unemployed, living off the allowance I gave my daughter, which really came out of my pocket. "Kyle, I'm working." Sure. "Just saying," he smirked. "Like they say, happy wife, happy life." He wasn't even married to Lauren. 4 years of living together in my house, and he couldn't be bothered to make it official, but he had plenty of opinions on how I should spend my money. I got up and walked to the window. Below, the pool shimmered deserted under the midday sun. At the back of the property, I could see the guest house where Lauren and Kyle lived. Separate entrance, full kitchen, 2 bedrooms. I'd had it built thinking about future visits from grandchildren. There were no grandchildren. Just Lauren and Kyle. The afternoon dissolved slowly. I heated up some leftover pasta and ate alone at the kitchen island. Kyle had taken over the living room watching TV. Lauren was on a video call in her room, her laughter piercing through the ceiling. At 7:30, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find Megan impeccable as always. Tailored blazer designer jeans, that smile she'd inherited from her mother. My older daughter, the successful marketing executive. Nice condo in a modern downtown high-rise, now married to Stephen Vance, an investment banker. "Hi, Dad." She kissed my cheek and swept into the house. I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. Westlake Hills wasn't exactly in the neighborhood of her downtown building, but I didn't say anything. She sat on the sofa, crossed her legs, and surveyed the living room like someone appraising a property. "How are you? You look tired. Long day. Business stuff." She picked up a picture frame from the end table, a photo of her and Lauren as little girls. She studied it for a moment, then set it back down slightly off-center. Stephen and I have been house hunting, she said. We found an incredible place out in Lakeway. 4 bedrooms, a pool, a view of the hills. It's perfect. I sat in the armchair across from her and waited. The thing is, we have to move fast. The market's so competitive. We need some help with the down payment. She smiled with a calculated warmth. $40,000. You know, after everything you spent on the wedding, this would just complete the picture. Help us start our life together the right way. $40,000. She said it like she was asking to borrow my truck. Something in my chest tightened, and that hollow feeling from the morning grew larger. 40,000, I repeated. There was a slight edge to my voice, so subtle almost no one would have noticed. Dad, we have to move fast. The market is competitive. I thought you'd want to help us start our life the right way. I looked at her, really looked at her. The designer clothes, the flawless manicure, the practiced warmth that never quite reached her eyes. Let me think about it, honey. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Think about it, Dad. This is important. Stephen and I need to check some things first. She stood up abruptly. Fine. But don't take too long. We can't lose that house. She grabbed her purse, gave me another kiss on the cheek, colder this time. Love you, Dad. Call me soon. I stood at the door watching her Mercedes pull away, as if I'd already said yes, as if my money was hers by right. Kyle's laughter echoed from the living room, sports reruns on my TV, his beer bottle leaving a wet ring on my coffee table. I went back inside, but something had shifted. The house felt different, or maybe the one who was changing was me. I picked up the phone from the hall table. Catherine's number was still in the call log. Tomorrow morning. Her studio. Whatever she'd found in those photos, I suspected it would explain this hollow feeling that had settled in my chest. I opened Megan's last text. Thanks for understanding about the house, Dad. Love you. I hadn't agreed to anything. But she assumed I had. They all did. I left the house before Lauren woke up. I didn't want questions, or to see Kyle's entitled gaze, as if my every move required his approval inside my own home. The drive to South Congress took a little over 20 minutes. Tuesday traffic, I-35, heading downtown. Then the narrower streets leading to Catherine's studio, a remodeled old warehouse, now a sleek photo studio. Her name shone on a brass plaque by the door. My hands were steady on the steering wheel, but my mind kept replaying her words. Something very serious. I parked across the street, turned off the engine and sat there for a moment. Whatever was in that studio, whatever Catherine had discovered was going to explain the casual request for $40,000, the feeling of emptiness I'd been carrying since the wedding. I knew it, and yet I didn't want to know how. The studio smelled of coffee and printer ink. Professionally framed photographs covered the walls, weddings, families, corporate portraits. Catherine met me at the door. She looked younger than I remembered from the wedding, maybe mid-40s. Nervous hands and apologetic look in her eyes. Mr. Hayes, thank you for coming, she said, locking the door behind me. I have everything set up in the editing room. I followed her through the gallery to a smaller room dominated by a huge monitor and computer equipment. Wedding albums lined the shelves. The window looked out onto an alley, morning light filtering through the dusty glass. Can I get you some coffee? Water, I'm fine, I lied. Please just show me. She nodded and sat at the computer. I stood behind her chair. Mr. Hayes, I almost didn't call you. I hesitated for days. But if I were in your shoes, I'd want to know. Please understand I wasn't looking for this. My throat felt tight. Show me. Her fingers moved quickly over the keyboard. The monitor filled with images from Megan's wedding. The ceremony. My daughter walking down the aisle. Stephen waiting. The guests smiling. It all looked beautiful, perfect. These are the standard shots, Catherine said in a low voice. The ones you saw on the slideshow at the wedding, the ones everyone saw. She clicked on another folder. 2 hours before the ceremony, I got to the reception hall early to test the light and set up my gear. There's a terrace that overlooks the courtyard. Another click. I was shooting through the glass just to calibrate, and this came into the frame. The image appeared on the screen. I felt my fingers dig into the back of her chair. Stephen, my brand new son-in-law, his tuxedo jacket still not fully buttoned, pressed against a red-haired woman. It wasn't my daughter. He was kissing her. His hands tangled in her hair, her arms wrapped around his neck. It wasn't a friendly greeting or an innocent farewell. It was an intimate, possessive, familiar gesture. How long before the ceremony, I asked, my voice sounding distant. 2 hours exactly. The timestamp is here. She pointed at the screen. Date, time. She opened the metadata, a box of numbers, timestamps, coordinates. I was just taking test shots through the window. I caught it by accident. But it's real. And there are several frames. She moved to the next photo. Different angle, same scene. Stephen and the redhead locked in the same kiss. In one of the photos, you could clearly see her hand on his chest. Left hand. A wedding ring, a gold and diamond band. I leaned closer to the screen. A wedding ring? Do you know who she is? Catherine shook her head. I don't recognize her from the guest list. I'm so sorry, Mr. Hayes. She opened another photo where Stephen's face was sharp and clear. No confusion, no drunken stumble. Just the calm, confident look of a man who knew exactly what he was doing 2 hours before marrying my daughter. I straightened up slowly. My knees felt weak. The room seemed to tilt for a second before righting itself. Can you prove the time? Absolutely. I want proof. You have it, she answered firmly. She opened another window with more technical data information I barely understood. Digital fingerprints of the file's GPS coordinates matching the venue's location, a timestamp down to the second. This would pass any forensic analysis, Mr. Hayes. It's solid evidence. She pulled a small USB drive from a drawer. Everything is on here. The photos, the metadata, a technical report. I made several copies. She offered me the drive. I don't know what you'll do with this information, but I believe you should have it. I took the USB drive and closed my fist around it. Don't apologize, I said. You did the right thing. The drive back home was a blur. I drove with my hands clamped on the wheel, my eyes fixed on the asphalt, but my mind was miles away. Stephen Vance, banker, polished, articulate, successful. Everything I had imagined for my daughter. Kissing another woman 2 hours before the wedding. A married woman. It didn't look like a slip-up or a panic attack. It was calculated, deliberate. So why marry Megan? That question circled in my head like a vulture. Why go through with an $85,000 wedding to a woman you were betraying hours beforehand? Why say the vows? Why smile for all those pictures? What was the goal? The truck found its own way, almost on autopilot through the Austin streets to my driveway. The USB drive in my pocket felt as heavy as a stone. I entered the house a little after 11. Everything looked the same as when I'd left 2 hours before. The same yard. The same garage light that I'd been meaning to change for months. The same, but I was no longer the same. I opened the front door. Kyle was sprawled in my recliner, a beer in his hand, a game show on the television. He didn't even look up. Hey, Walt. While you're up, grab me another cold one. No. From upstairs, Lauren's voice called out. Dad, is that you? I need to talk to you about money for the spa this weekend. I stood in the foyer with the USB drive in my pocket, and something inside me that had been bending for years finally snapped. One daughter's husband cheating on her 2 hours before the wedding. The other daughter living in my house demanding money for a spa. Her boyfriend ordering me to bring him a beer in my recliner. In my living room. I closed the door with a soft click. They thought I was still the same man who had left that morning. They were wrong. I didn't sleep. I stayed in my study until after midnight, Catherine's USB drive next to my laptop. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the photos. Stephen's face confident, with no trace of guilt or confusion. I opened the Excel file with the wedding budget. $85, 0 inches total. Venue, catering, photographer, flowers, band. Everything Megan had wanted. But there was one thing she'd insisted on with particular vehemence. Cash gifts, Dad. No registry, no china. We're starting from scratch. We need flexibility. Cash is just more practical. At the time, I'd thought it was a mature decision. Now I wasn't so sure. I took a notepad and started jotting down figures, dates, details that suddenly no longer seemed innocent. The guest list, 200 people, almost all business partners, friends, and people who had known Megan since she was a girl. I remembered the tables laden with envelopes at the reception. She had hired someone specifically to collect and count them. $75,000 in cash and checks, she'd told me, laughing the following week. Stephen and I are so blessed, Dad. People were so generous. I wrote that number down and circled it. Then I remembered something else. My business partner, Mark Chen, had given Stephen a check directly at the reception. I was standing right there. Welcome to the family, son, he'd said. Start off on the right foot. $10,000. Mark was wealthy and generous with people he respected. Stephen had pocketed the check and smiled. Thank you, sir. We won't forget this. Just in wedding gifts for a couple starting their life. I wrote down the figure. The question returned. Why marry Megan if you already had another woman? I looked at the question on the notepad. If Stephen had another woman, a married one at that, why go through with the wedding? Why smile in the photos? Say the vows, unless the vows didn't matter. But the money did. My stomach turned. The night dragged on. At tray M. I made coffee and stood at the kitchen window looking at the dark silhouette of the hills. Somewhere in the city, Megan was sleeping next to the man who had betrayed her before they were even married. Or maybe she knew. Maybe she didn't care. That thought hit me harder than the first one. At 7, I showered, put on a pair of khaki pants and a polo shirt, and left again before Lauren woke up. I didn't want to see her or hear Kyle's voice. The bank opened at 9. I went to the branch where I did all my business banking, familiar territory. The manager, Patricia Herrera, met me in her office. We'd been working together for 15 years. Walter, what a pleasure. What brings you in so early? I wanted to verify a check deposit, I said. A wedding gift for my daughter. $10,000. I just want to make sure it was deposited correctly. Patricia typed on her computer. Let's see. Yes, here it is. Deposited into a joint account for Stephen and Megan Vance. Everything looks correct. Joint account, I asked, as if in passing. When did they open it? Says here May 10th, about 2 months ago. 2 months before the wedding. Not years ago. Not when they got engaged. 2 months. They must have planned the wedding fast, I commented lightly. Kids these days. Patricia smiled. Everything's a rush for them. I thanked her and left. In my truck, I sat for a moment with the engine running. May 10th. They had opened a joint account specifically for the wedding gifts. They had planned it, coordinated it. It wasn't romance. It was logistics. I drove home, my head spinning. The driveway was just as cluttered. Kyle's old beater was still there, needing a trip to the shop for months. I came in through the garage door, intending to go straight to my study. Then I heard Lauren's voice from upstairs. Yeah, Dad's been acting weird lately, she was saying. I don't know. Different. But don't worry, sis. Kyle and I can hold out for another 6 months, no problem. By then, he'll cave and buy us a condo just to get us out of his hair. I froze in the hallway. Megan's voice came through the speakerphone as loud as Lauren always set her calls. Perfect, she said. I'll play the happy wife for another 2 months, then I'll file for divorce. Half of the gift money is legally mine here in Texas. Stephen already agreed to a 60-40 split in my favor. It's the easiest 45 grand I've ever made. I had to put a hand on the wall to keep my balance. Lauren let out a cackle, and Stephen's little girlfriend has no idea about the plan. It's perfect. Dad is so proud of your marriage he doesn't see a thing. You just keep him distracted, Megan replied. Make him think you need something big so when I ask for the down payment on the house, it won't seem like too much. Already started, Lauren laughed. I asked for a new car yesterday. I could tell he was annoyed, but he'll get over it. He always does. I backed away silently step by step until I reached my study. I closed the door softly, almost without breathing, and sank into my chair. My hands were shaking. 2 daughters. Both of them lying. Both of them using me. One, planning a quickie divorce to keep half the wedding gifts. The other installed in my house, counting the months until I'd buy her a condo just to get rid of her. Happy wife. Easiest money I've ever made. I had almost said yes to the $40,000 check for the down payment. Almost. I turned on my computer and typed into the search bar, Asset Protection Attorney Austin. The third result was a man named Robert Davies. 25 years of experience. Real estate law, trusts, asset protection. He had an opening the next day at 9 a.m. I booked it. Then I looked at the closed study door. On the other side, Lauren was probably still on the phone and Kyle was sprawled on the couch. They were comfortable, confident. They had no idea what was coming. Neither did I entirely. But tomorrow I would start to find out. Tomorrow I would stop being a wallet with a heartbeat. Davies' office was on a high floor of a glass tower downtown. I arrived 10 minutes early and spent them in the parking garage reviewing the folder one last time, the wedding breakdown. Catherine's USB drive, my notes with dates, phrases, amounts. All in order. The elevator ride felt longer than it was. I had spent 40 years making business decisions, negotiating with suppliers, dealing with employees, and economic downturns. This shouldn't feel different. But it did. This was my family at stake. Or what was left of it. As the elevator doors opened, I corrected myself mentally. No, it's not the family that's at stake. They broke that when they turned me into a transaction. The reception was understated. Glass desk, leather armchairs, abstract paintings I didn't understand but knew were expensive. The receptionist looked up. Mr. Hayes, Mr. Davies is expecting you. I walked into the office. Floor-to-ceiling windows with a view of the city. A dark wood desk, bookshelves lined with legal codes and framed diplomas. Robert Davies stood to greet me. Mid-50s, graying at the temples, a firm handshake. Mr. Hayes, come in, have a seat. Can I offer you some coffee black, please? He poured from a carafe and handed me a ceramic mug before sitting down. I read the intake form you filled out, he said, picking up a pen. It mentions property issues and family matters. Tell me what's happening. Start wherever is easiest for you. I placed the folder on his desk and opened it calmly. A month ago, I paid for my daughter's wedding. $85,000. 3 days ago, the photographer showed me pictures of my daughter's husband kissing another woman 2 hours before the ceremony. Yesterday, I discovered that my older daughter plans to file for divorce in 2 months to keep half the wedding gifts. And the younger one, who lives in my house with her boyfriend, has been counting on me to buy her a condo to get her to leave. Davies' pen paused for a second over his legal pad. When you say she plans this, he asked, do you mean you have proof that your daughter and son-in-law intended to divorce from the start? I overheard my younger daughter on the phone with the older one, I answered. Her exact words were, 2 more months and I'll file for divorce. Half the gifts are legally mine. Stephen already agreed to a 60-40 split. And it's the easiest money I've ever made. He wrote down the phrase and circled it. I slid the USB drive across the desk. Here are the photos of the infidelity with metadata and coordinates. The exact time. Davies opened them on his computer. He looked through several without changing his expression, but I saw his jaw tighten. And your younger daughter? He asked after a moment, still taking notes. She's been living in my guest house for 4 years, I said. She and her boyfriend pay no rent. There's no lease, just demands for money. Yesterday I heard her tell her sister they could hold out for another 6 months until I caved and bought them a condo. Davies underlined 4 years and no lease. Look, when it comes to property, the law in this state is clear, he explained, pulling a thick volume from his bookshelf. Your house is yours. If there's no lease agreement and you no longer consent to their presence, they are legally occupants with no right to be there. You can begin eviction proceedings. The standard is a 30-day written notice. And can they fight it? Without a lease, without any rent receipts, it's very difficult. They are there as guests who have overstayed their welcome. The law protects you. Those 30 days are more of a courtesy than a negotiation. I felt something loosen in my chest. A courtesy, not a negotiation. Davies opened the book to a marked page and turned it for me to see. I read the highlighted articles, tenancy requirements, notice periods, eviction procedures. It all looked simpler than it sounded. We draft a formal notice, he continued. You deliver it to them in person or via certified mail. From that moment, they have 30 days to leave. If they don't, we petition the court for a writ of possession. Without a lease, the judge won't have much to hear from their side. And the rest, I asked. My assets, the business. I don't want them to get anything more than the bare minimum when I'm gone. They've made it clear I'm just a source of money. Davies closed the book. That's where an irrevocable trust comes in, he said. You transfer your properties, your company shares, and your savings into a trust managed by a professional third-party trustee. You still control everything during your lifetime, but upon your death, the distribution is made exactly as you specify. It's much harder to contest than a simple will. Harder? How much harder? Nearly impossible if structured correctly. He gave a slight smile. A will can be challenged with arguments of undue influence, mental incapacity, 1,000 things. An irrevocable trust signed when you are of sound mind and acting freely is a different story. I leaned back in the chair. When can we start? Today, he replied. I'll need you to sign a retainer agreement for the full scope of work. Eviction notices will modification and the complete creation of the trust. It will be $8,500. The trust alone usually costs $6,000, but since it's all related, I can offer you a package deal. I had spent $85,000 on a fake wedding, another $75, 0 inches gifts that my daughter and her accomplice had collected, tens of thousands more supporting Lauren and Kyle for 4 years. $8,500 to secure the rest of my life felt cheap. I'll do it. Davies pulled the contract, the fee schedule, and a work calendar from a drawer. We'll have the eviction notices ready by Friday morning, he said. You'll serve them this weekend. I suggest you do it yourself so there's no doubt they receive them. The 30-day clock starts then. The trust will take 2 to 3 weeks to complete the transfer of assets. My assistant will be in touch to request your bank statements, property deeds, everything we need. I read the contract carefully as I had taught myself to do in business. Scope of work fees, timelines, everything he had promised, written in legalese. I signed with a steady hand. Davies signed as well, dated it, and gave me a copy. I must warn you about one more thing, Mr. Hayes, he added. This will likely destroy your relationship with your daughters forever. Once they get those notices, once they see how you've arranged your inheritance, there will be no going back. I know, I replied. Are you sure you're prepared for that? I thought of Lauren's laughter on the phone, of Megan's phrase, the easiest money I've ever made. They had already destroyed the relationship. I was just acknowledging it. I'm more than prepared. Davies nodded. Then we're clear. I'll call you Friday morning when the documents are ready. I left the office with copies of the contract and the trust outline in a folder. 40 years of work were finally beginning to be protected. The elevator ride down was faster. Gravity was on my side. In the truck, I placed the folder on the passenger seat. Eviction procedure. Will summary. Trust structure. My phone buzzed. A text from Megan. Dad, have you thought about the down payment? We really need an answer. The house won't wait. $40,000 for a house she planned to live in for 2 months before filing for divorce. I deleted the message without replying. I started the engine and drove home. Lauren and Kyle would be there, comfortable, confident. They had 30 days left to enjoy that confidence. I had 30 days to prepare for war. The envelopes arrived on Friday morning. The return address was Davies' law firm. The paper was thick with official-looking seals. I placed them on my desk and stared at them for most of the day as if they were explosives. As evening fell, I knew it was time. I could hear Lauren and Kyle in the living room. His voice was animated, hers playing along. I took the envelopes and walked down the hall. I found them on the couch comfortable. Kyle was gesticulating while Lauren nodded. And the craft brewery scene is blowing up, he was saying. The Austin market is perfect. We'd need about 30 grand to get started. Your dad would see his money back in a year. Easy. Lauren laughed. He'll say yes. He always says yes. You just have to frame it as helping the family, and he'll write the check. I walked into the room. They both looked up and smiled, suspecting nothing. I placed an envelope in front of each of them on the coffee table. What's this? Lauren asked, puzzled, picking hers up. Dad, we were just talking about Kyle's project. They're eviction notices, I said. You have 30 days to find another place to live. The words fell like stones into a still lake. Lauren tore open the envelope, read the heading, and the color drained from her face. Kyle ripped his open, glanced at it, and exploded. Are you crazy, old man? This is our home. It's my home, I corrected him calmly. And yes, I can. You can't just kick us out like we're strangers. Lauren burst into tears on cue as if she'd pressed a button. Dad, what are you doing? I'm your daughter. How can you put us out on the street? You haven't paid rent in 4 years, I replied. You don't respect me. You see me as a wallet. It's time for you to grow up. This is insane. Kyle took a step toward me, invading my space, his fists clenched. Everyone is going to say you're a monster. Your friends, your partners at the Hardware Association, they're all going to know you threw out your own daughter, Grude. The notice is legal, I said, not moving. 30 days. I suggest you start packing. Lauren grabbed my arm. Dad, please, we can fix this. We can pay rent, we can… I gently but firmly removed her hand and turned back toward the hall. You're going to regret this, Kyle yelled after me. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. I closed the study door and locked it. Behind it, I could hear the volume escalate. Lauren's screams, Kyle's insults, the thud of furniture being hit. I sat at my desk and listened for 10 minutes. Then the voices lowered to whispers. Lauren was calling Megan again. I moved closer to the door and pressed my ear against it. He gave us eviction papers, she was saying. 30 days. A pause. I don't know what's gotten into him. He's cold like we're strangers. Another longer pause. We have to do something. Megan's voice came through the speakerphone, crisp and calm, calculating. I couldn't make out the exact words, but I recognized the tone. Strategy mode. Okay, she said finally. I'll come over with Steven tomorrow. We'll talk to him face to face. I moved away from the door and went back to my desk. I opened my laptop. Davies had already sent me the draft of the trust, the list of assets to be transferred, a complete wealth protection plan. They thought the eviction was the whole story. They had no idea I was protecting everything else. My phone buzzed again. It was Megan. Dad, Lauren told me. We need to talk. We're coming to see you with Steven tomorrow. This has gotten out of hand. I read it slowly. They were regrouping, coordinating a counteroffensive. Let them come. I opened my calendar and marked the day. Day 1 of 30. The clock was ticking for them and for me. On Saturday morning, I came downstairs to find Lauren in her bathrobe draped over the couch. Dad, she said in a weak, dramatic voice, I can't get up. My heart is beating funny. The stress from the eviction. I think you should call a doctor. Kyle stood beside her, arms crossed, watching my reaction. I kept walking toward the kitchen. There's Tylenol in the medicine cabinet, I answered without stopping. Behind me, silence. Then a frustrated sigh from Lauren. I poured myself coffee and shut myself in the study. On Sunday afternoon, Kyle intercepted me in the garage. He stood in the doorway blocking my path. You know what people are going to say, right? He asked aggressively. That you kicked out your own daughter, your pregnant daughter. Lauren wasn't pregnant. Another lie. Your business partners, your friends, they're all going to see who you really are. I glanced at my watch. The eviction is legal. You have 26 days left. Move. He stood frozen in the doorway. 10 seconds. 20. Jaw-tight fists clenched. Finally, he stepped aside. I got in my truck and drove to the hardware store. I spent 3 hours checking inventory and talking to the managers, grateful to be in a place where my words still meant something. When I got back that night, there was an envelope on the kitchen counter, labeled by hand, proposal. I opened it. It was Kyle's handwriting. Investment Opportunity Craft Brewery. Initial capital $50,000. Conditions: Lauren and I stay in the house. We pay a symbolic rent of $500. Month. Investment returned in 5 years. Guaranteed profit. Family united. He had nearly doubled the amount he'd mentioned before. Desperation had inflated the numbers. I read the 2 pages of empty promises and made up projections and carried them to the living room. I didn't say a word, just dropped the proposal into the trash can in front of them. No, wasn't just a word, it was an action. Back in my study, dinner in hand, I could hear their angry whispers and the sound of plates being slammed on the table on the other side of the wall. Monday and Tuesday were the same. Lauren alternated between tears and offended silences. Kyle vacillated between threats and business offers. I maintained my routine. Work, home, study, meals. They became background noise. On Wednesday afternoon, Megan called. Dad, we're coming for dinner. Stephen and me. We need to talk as a family. She didn't ask, she announced. They arrived at 6. Megan was carrying grocery bags. We're cooking tonight, she said, walking in as if she owned the place. You work so hard, Dad. Stephen smiled, shaking my hand with a practiced firmness. Walt, I hope you don't mind us inviting ourselves over. Megan was worried. A family should support each other in difficult times. They took over the kitchen. Megan chopped vegetables. Stephen set the table, folded napkins, wine glasses. Lauren came downstairs with perfect makeup, no trace of illness. Kyle appeared freshly showered, playing the part of the sensible man. It was a carefully staged intervention. We ate the roast chicken with potatoes and salad they had prepared. Good presentation. The conversation was forced. Stephen talked about his work in banking, though I knew he sold luxury cars. We all played our parts for a while until Megan changed her tone. Dad, we've been talking, she began. This house must be a lot for you to handle on your own. So many rooms, the yard, the upkeep. Haven't you thought about something smaller? A nice, comfortable condo. I cut a piece of chicken, chewing it slowly. Stephen picked up the thread. The real estate market is in a great place right now, he said. You could sell this house for a great price. We could help you organize everything, make it a smooth process. With the money you'd get, you could support all of us, Lauren and Kyle with a place of their own, and Megan and me with the down payment for the house we saw. We'd all win. There it was. Megan casually reached over and adjusted a photo frame on the end table, correcting its position, taking ownership of the space. We'd help you with the move, of course, she added. And with the cash in hand, it would be ideal to distribute it while you're alive. That way there are no problems later. Better to have everything clear from the start. They want the money from the house, I thought. Not as an inheritance someday. Now, all at once, it all clicked. Dad, I'm just saying you're getting older, she added. It would be easier to have something manageable, less responsibility. I set down my silverware, picked up the manila folder I had placed face down next to my plate, and held it up. Before we continue, there's something you all need to see. Megan took the folder suspiciously. What is this? They're photos from your wedding, I said. Specifically the ones Catherine took 2 hours before the ceremony on the terrace of the reception hall. Stephen went pale. That's not... Megan opened the folder. I saw her eyes scan the first image, then the second. Her expression hardened into stone. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter where I continued. I also heard the conversation you had with Lauren, and I quote, 2 more months, and I'll file for divorce. Half the gifts are legally mine. Stephen already agreed to a 60-40 split. It's the easiest money I've ever made. Those were your words, Megan. Lauren's hand flew to her mouth. Kyle half rose from his chair. You were spying on us, he spat. You had no right, I held up a hand. Enough. Kyle sat back down. I have created an irrevocable trust, I continued. My house, my business, my savings, everything is protected. When I die, you will each receive the legal minimum required by law and not 1 cent more. Rage filled Megan's eyes. You can't do that. We're your family. I stood up slowly, pushed my chair back, folded my napkin, and placed it next to my plate. Lauren and Kyle have 15 days to vacate, I said. This conversation is over. Dad, Megan stood up too. You're destroying this family. Why? Over some misunderstood photos, I paused in the dining room doorway. I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm protecting what I built from people who decided to see me as a resource, not a father. I walked down the hall to my study, closed the door and locked it. Behind me, the dining room erupted. Megan's shouts, Stephen's justifications, Lauren's sobs, Kyle's insults. I turned on my computer and saw an email from Davies. Trust documents ready for final signature. You can come in tomorrow at 9. I typed back, I'll be there. Outside, the 4 of them were still arguing. They could scream all night. Nothing would change. The photos were on the table. The truth had been spoken. The trust was nearly complete. Lauren and Kyle had 15 days of occupancy left. Megan's fraudulent marriage would last as long as it had to, but it would no longer be financed by me. The next day, at 9 a.m., I was in Davies's conference room. With him was an estate planning specialist, Jenna Chang. Mr. Hayes, she greeted me firmly. Everything is ready. They spread a stack of documents across the table, deeds, assignments of rights, distribution instructions. It looked like a wall of paper. With this, we transfer your home into the trust, Jenna explained. Upon your death, it will be distributed according to these clauses, the legal minimum to direct family members, the rest to the charities you've chosen. Your business and your accounts follow the same logic. And my daughters can't break this, I asked. They can try, she replied. But a trust of this type signed while you are in full command of your faculties is one of the most solid instruments in existence. It's as ironclad as anything can be in law. I signed page after page. Initials here, full signature there. Transfer of the house of the shares in Hayes, hardware of the savings and investments. With the last signature, Jenna gathered the documents. It's done, she said. As of this moment, your estate is formally protected. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in months. The next 13 days were an intensive course in psychological warfare. On day 2, I found the coffee maker shattered on the kitchen floor. Kyle was sitting at the table reading the paper. It slipped, he said with a shrug. Accidents happen. I swept up the pieces and threw them in the trash. 11 days, I commented, without looking at him. On day 4, I heard Lauren talking to the neighbor over the fence. I peeked discreetly through the window. Lauren was dabbing her eyes with a tissue, exaggerating every gesture. He's throwing us out on the street with nothing, she was saying. I don't know what's gotten into him. Mrs. Peterson looked uncomfortable, searching for diplomatic words. I'm sure you and your father will work it out, she stammered. You never know what people are going through. I don't know, ma'am, Lauren insisted. He's unrecognizable. It's like he's not my dad anymore. I stepped away from the window. Let her tell whatever version she wanted. The reality was in writing. On day 7, Megan arrived with a woman in a business suit carrying a clipboard. Dad, this is Dr. Morrison, she announced, a psychologist. We think it might be good for you to talk to someone. Your daughter is concerned about some recent behavioral changes, the woman said with a professional smile. Impulsive decisions, family alienation. Sometimes this can indicate... It indicates that I want you to leave my house. I interrupted. I did not agree to any appointment with you. Both of you out. Dad, she's just trying to help you. Out, I repeated. They left. On day 10, returning from the store, I noticed the study door wasn't closed properly. I always left it ajar. On the desk, the trust folder was in almost the same spot. Almost. One corner was bent differently. Someone had opened it. That night, Lauren was quieter than usual. Kyle kept staring at his phone. They knew now. They knew the trust was real, that the money was no longer within their reach. On day 12, Lauren knocked on the study door. Kyle wasn't with her. Dad, can we talk? She asked softly. I gestured to the chair. She sat down, a tissue in her hand, her eyes red. I've been thinking about everything, she sighed. You were right. About Kyle, about how we've been living. He's not a good influence. I see that now. I waited in silence. I've made terrible mistakes. I'm asking you. I'm begging you to forgive me. Give me another chance. I can change. I can be the daughter you deserve. The performance was perfect. The broken voice, the body leaning forward, the trembling hands. If you had truly understood your mistakes, I said finally, you wouldn't be here asking for forgiveness as a bargaining chip. You would come even if you knew nothing would change regarding the money. But you're here hoping I'll change my mind about the house and the trust. No, you want me to believe Kyle manipulated you, that you're the victim. But I heard your laughter when you said I would cave in the end, that you just had to hold out. The mask fell in an answer. Instant. The tears dried up, her voice hardened. Fine. Be alone then. But don't come asking us for help when you're old. 8 days, I replied. Start thinking about what to pack first. She left, slamming the door. Upstairs, I heard her footsteps and Kyle's annoyed voice asking questions. Then hers, full of rage. I didn't understand the words, but the message was clear: the plan had failed. I opened my calendar. 8 days until the eviction. Davies had already coordinated with the court. If the deadline passed and they were still here, a sheriff's deputy would come. My phone showed a text from Megan. I hope you're happy. You just destroyed your family. I deleted it without replying. The trust folder rested in my desk drawer, signed, sealed, and registered. The house was formally mine, the business untouchable. My will reflected my decisions, not their expectations. There were 8 days of war left. After that would come silence, and for the first time in 4 years, peace. On day 30, I arrived home at 10 a.m. Behind me pulled in a sheriff's car with 2 deputies and Davies's car. We had coordinated everything. The court officer, a middle-aged man accustomed to tense scenes, introduced himself. Good morning, Mr. Hayes, he said, shaking my hand. We're here to execute the eviction order. Everything is in order. We walked together to the front door. Even though it was my house, I knocked 3 firm times. From the other side, silence. Then Kyle's voice. Get lost. You can't do this. The officer raised his voice. Sir, I am an officer of the civil court. I have a writ of possession. Open the door, or we will be forced to enter. That becomes a criminal offense. Your choice. There was a pause. Whispers. The door creaked open. Lauren's face appeared, her eyes swollen, a mix of defiance and panic. The officer pushed the door open and stepped inside. Davies and I followed. The living room looked like a battlefield. Clothes everywhere, stacked pizza boxes, empty cans. Nothing was packed. Weren't quite ready to leave, were you? The officer commented, making a note on his clipboard. You have 2 hours to remove your personal effects. Clothing, daily use items. Furniture and appliances stay. Your time starts now. 2 hours, Lauren shrieked. That's impossible. You've had 30 days, ma'am, he replied. 2 hours is generous. Kyle appeared from the kitchen, unshaven fury simmering in his eyes. This is an abuse of power. We have rights. Not here, you don't, Davies countered. No lease, no claim to the property. It's day 30. There's nothing left to discuss. Kyle stared at me. You're really going to do this, old man? To your own daughter, I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The officer checked his watch. Start now. What followed was slow-motion chaos. Lauren frantically stuffing clothes into trash bags, sobbing intermittently. Kyle throwing things into a suitcase, muttering insults. I stood by watching them dismantle their invasion. Several times they tried to catch my eye, hoping for a flicker of pity. They didn't find one. After 2 hours, the deputies approached the officer. Time's up, he said. Anything left here is considered abandoned. Lauren and Kyle made one last trip to their old dented car, which was packed to the roof. As she slammed the trunk, Lauren turned to me. You're going to regret this, she said. When you're old and sick and alone, don't expect us to be there. I held her gaze. Don't worry. I won't. The sheriff and Davies drove away. When silence finally settled, I walked through the house slowly. The living room without Kyle, the kitchen without Lauren's demands, the guest house empty. It was all mine again. That night, the phone rang. It was Megan. I hesitated, then answered. Well, I hope you're satisfied, she said, her voice ice cold. You took everything from us. Was it worth it? I looked at an old family photo on the bookshelf. A different time, different people. I didn't take anything from you, I replied. I just stopped paying. To be mistreated. You've changed, she said after a pause. I don't even know who you are anymore. I'm the same person, I answered. I just stopped fooling myself. We'll see how long that lasts, she spat, before hanging up. 3 days later, a text came from an unknown number. It was Stephen. Mr. Hayes. I know you have the photos. Megan knew about my relationship. Our marriage was an arrangement. We are already processing the divorce. I just ask you to stay out of it. I can offer you $10,000 to let this go quietly. I read the message once and deleted it. I blocked the number. Megan had known about the other woman all along. The entire wedding had been a business deal between two con artists. They had split the gifts, planned the divorce. And now Stephen was trying to bribe me into silence. $10,000 for my silence. I looked at the empty living room, the furniture I had chosen, the tranquility that was beginning to settle in. For 4 years, I had opened my home to Lauren and Kyle temporarily. I had given them my space, my peace, my money. I had financed a wedding for a daughter who saw marriage as a financial transaction. I had written checks to support other people's schemes. Now the house was empty, except for me. 3 weeks had passed since the eviction. It was late August. That morning I was drinking coffee on the patio watching the sun climb over the city. The air was already warm, but a light breeze made it bearable. Silence. Real silence beyond the birds and the distant hum of traffic. The new coffee maker worked perfectly. Kyle had smashed the old one and I'd replaced it the day after he left. The TV was off. When I turned it on, the remote was where I'd left it. My recliner held only my body. The refrigerator had food I had bought for me. No one asked me to pay for groceries because it's the least you can do. Simple things, but revolutionary. Lauren had called twice that week. I let the calls go to voicemail and deleted the messages without listening. I knew from a comment the manager at the hardware store had made that she and Kyle had found a cheap apartment on the outskirts of the city. Kyle was now working a regular job. They were learning what it meant to pay rent. Good. Megan had called once 2 weeks ago. I need help with a down payment after the divorce. Just $20,000. You're my dad. I said a single word. No. And hung up. Nothing more. No explanations, no guilt. She and Stephen had divorced just as they'd planned. The judge had dealt with the wedding gifts. Between the fight and the lawyer's fees, they both lost money. An ironic justice. They had collected envelopes hoping to get rich, and ended up burning through the cash on retainers. The mail carrier came up to the door and left a stack of envelopes. Among the bills, I recognized the letterhead from Davies's firm. I opened the letter on the patio. Dear Mr. Hayes, we are pleased to inform you that all procedures for the trust have been concluded. Your assets have been correctly transferred and the distribution instructions have been registered. You maintain full control during your lifetime, with complete protection after your passing. I read the paragraph twice and left the letter on the table. Case closed. Legal fortress complete. My estate no longer depended on anyone's whims. Next to the envelope lay the book I was using to learn guitar. On Wednesday, I would have my 3rd lesson. I had always wanted to play. For 40 years, I'd been saying, Someday, when I have time. Time had finally arrived. On Fridays, I went to the local senior center to fix doors, locks, and outlets. My hardware store experience for the first time in years was useful for something without anyone demanding a receipt. I helped because I wanted to, not because someone was blackmailing me. The phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it but answered. Hello, Mr. Hayes. It was a familiar voice. It's Catherine Price, the photographer from your daughter's wedding. I hope you don't mind me calling. I was quiet for a second, surprised. No, I don't mind at all, Catherine. On the contrary. I've thought a lot about you since that day, she confessed. About how you walked out of my studio with that drive. I've wondered how it all turned out. I was worried I'd done the wrong thing. You did what you had to do, I said. Those photos opened my eyes. You gave me the truth when everyone else was giving me lies. And how are you now? She asked carefully. If you don't mind my asking. I looked out at the valley in front of the house, the morning light, the coffee in my hand. I'm okay, Catherine, I replied. For the first time in a long time, I'm actually okay. I'm so glad to hear that, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. You deserve it. You were always so kind that day despite the chaos. I surprised myself by asking, would you like to get coffee sometime? I'd like to thank you properly. And honestly, it would be nice to just talk. There was a brief pause, then a soft laugh. I'd love that, she answered. Next week is perfect. After I hung up, I sat on the patio, the phone on the table. Coffee with Catherine next week. Guitar lesson on Wednesday. Volunteering on Friday. A visit to the stores on Thursday. A life, a rhythm built around what I chose, not what others demanded. I thought about the entire journey. Catherine's call that shattered my illusions. The photos. The overheard conversation. The first meeting with the lawyer. The notice on the coffee table. The dinner with the photos on the placemat. The days of manipulation. The door opened by an officer with a court order in hand. Every step had been necessary. Every boundary essential. My daughters think I destroyed the family, that I chose loneliness over love. They're wrong. I chose to stop confusing love with abuse. I chose to protect myself. I chose the truth, however uncomfortable, over continuing to support a lie that was profitable for everyone but me. The sun climbed higher, warming the patio. I finished my coffee. Inside, the guitar was waiting. A life was waiting. The future for the first time belonged to me. Lauren would call again. I would let it ring. Kyle might text. I would delete the message. Megan would insist. I would say no. They were learning to solve their own problems. I was learning to stop solving them for them. The trust folder with all its seals and signatures rested in my desk. Every line said the same thing: my decisions matter. Theirs no longer. I leaned on the railing and looked out at the city. My house. My view. My peace. Alone, yes. Free also. And for the first time in many years, maybe my entire life, that was exactly what I wanted. The next chapter was mine to write. A coffee with someone who wanted nothing more than a conversation. Awkward but honest music coming from a guitar. Repairs made because I wanted to help, not because someone demanded it. A life lived on my terms. Justice wasn't revenge. It was protection. It was boundaries. It was learning to say no when no was the only sane answer. I had saved myself, and that was worth everything. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what it made you feel. To listen to the next story, click on the box to the left. Thanks for listening.